there YouTube, long time no see. So I decided to start making videos again, kind of just because sometimes I feel like ranting into the void. I've been posting a lot more fun content on TikTok, like little styling videos and stuff, but there's not a lot of room on there for like more serious analysis and discussion, so I think I'm just going to make those videos here and post them here because then they're more long form. And I'll maybe do some styling content, but I think I'm going to mostly keep that all to TikTok because it does not need to be a full YouTube video. I know I haven't been here in a while, and that's because I had nothing to post, and I hate editing. Those of you who know me know I hate editing. These kind of more ranty, discussion-based videos I think are easier to edit, so it won't be as annoying to me. So that's the plan here. Today's discussion topic is whether or not it is worth it to purchase designer fashion, as you can tell from the title of this video. Most of us, especially those of us who have never purchased designer fashion before, are constantly wondering, like, is it actually worth how much they're charging for it? Like, why do they charge so much for it? You know, they're probably just charging for the name and not for any sort of quality increase or anything like that. So today I'm going to kind of delve into that topic, and by the end of this video I'll answer the question of whether or not it is worth it. I'm going to go through 3 different reasons why people actually purchase designer fashion, that being clout, design, and quality. And then I'll go over a couple cons. And at the end, of course, I'll have my conclusion. I know most people just skip to that anyway, but for those of you who actually want to find out my reasoning, continue watching. So first we're going to go over clout. This one is kind of the hardest to explain, but the easiest to intuitively understand, I think, especially for those of us who follow the fashion community, because clout is just the value assigned to a brand by consumers. So for example, even though brands like Supreme and Carhartt are both consumed by the streetwear community, Supreme is the one that everyone gets all hyped about and the prices get really jacked up and it gets kind of crazy, whereas Carhartt is a good brand and they like it, but no one cares about it as much. So to explore clout, we're going to talk about 2 brands as like case studies, right? So we're going to talk about Gucci, which is a well-established fashion house that's been around for forever. It's a household name at this point. And then we're going to look at Supreme, which kind of rose to popularity in the 2010s after getting a lot of hype on social media. So Gucci, like many traditional designer brands, started in leather works, like making luggage and handbags, which obviously they're still well known for today. Gucci itself has been around since 1921. Gucci is honestly a household name just because it's a legacy brand, right? Like, it's been around for forever. It got popular first because it was known to be good quality, and now it continues to be popular both because of that lasting impression and also because in recent years Gucci's actually done a really good job at collaborating with different IPs and producing some really fun and kind of unique designs, especially, like I said, in the leatherworks, handbags, wallets, stuff like that. So Gucci has just been around for a long time, and that's why they have clout, is because they're just a very well-established designer fashion house. You know, they participate in runway shows, they have all their fashion week stuff. They're just a big deal in general. So Supreme started out as like a skateboarding type brand in 1994, and they've kind of gradually grown in popularity ever since, but there was a really big boom with the hypebeast movement of streetwear, like in the mid-2010s. They gained a lot of popularity from that, both because they often would parody other things. Their logo itself is kind of a ripoff from an artist. They do a lot of collaborations, which of course helps boost popularity. They did a lot of social media marketing too. That's honestly a big thing with the brands that are getting popular these days, is just virality on social media, right? And that helps build clout a lot as well. Supreme also likes to just have fun with stamping their logo on random stuff like bricks and like those dollar bill shooting guns. Yeah, they can get kind of wild with stuff, but of course it goes for high prices because they limit the number that they make. I just wanted to elaborate on this. I said that they limit the number of things they make, and that's a big factor into why the prices go up and why there's so much hype around it, is because you want to get in to be one of those few people that get that thing, like it's an exclusivity thing. Same thing with like purchasing really expensive designer brands. It's like elite, you know, like you seem special because you were able to get this thing. So I think that's definitely a big factor as well into the pricing, and just the clout that surrounds the brand is the exclusivity of being able to get one of those pieces. You know, it's like I said, it started out as a skateboarding brand, so of course the streetwear community is all over it. So they just got really popular through a vast majority of means, mostly social media related over the past 10 years or so. And now they just have a lot of clout surrounding them, which means that their prices are way higher than they should be for what you're getting, but that's just how it is with a lot of fashion, honestly. But why buy things that have clout? Like, right? Like, why do people want clout? It's just because they want to look cool, really. Like, what clout is and what that status is, especially if these items are expensive, which honestly, everything that has a lot of clout tends to be expensive. It's because you want to look expensive, right? It's like a term of signaling, right? You want people to think you're hip, you want them to think you're cool, maybe that you have money even if you don't, which is exactly why people buy knockoffs, right? Of brands like Gucci and Louis Vuitton, things like that, that have a lot of clout. People will buy knockoffs just to hope people think that they have money, right? Like, even if it isn't real, people don't care as long as it looks real to the untrained eye, because that's how you get clout. People will look at you and think, oh, that's LV, you have money, you're cool, right? Like, even though some people definitely don't care, but it's mostly to get people. Why is their cars going by so loudly? But that's really just the gist of clout, is people want to look cool, they want to look rich, because that's an aspirational lifestyle. So regardless of whether it's real or not, they buy into these brands that have a lot of hype and a lot of reputation behind them. Next, let's talk about design. So design is kind of an interesting aspect, because as we all know, the major fashion houses and the major fashion conglomerates determine what the trends are going to be. They make their big runway shows for all the different fashion weeks, showcasing those trends in some way or another, and then that kind of trickles down slowly through the different levels of fashion and down when you finally get to fast fashion, where everything is cheap and is the most simplified, easily marketable version of that trend, right? So what designer brands do is they start the trend by doing something more over the top, more extravagant usually, something with a lot more detail to it, and then it gets pared down throughout the levels until we get to fast fashion, where it is then the most basic form. So for example, like the big puffies, poof sleeves, that's what they're called. Poof sleeves were a trend like this past year. And of course, all the big fashion houses do these huge dramatic poof sleeves that were just like way too big, obviously, to be useful in everyday life, but they would need to look cool for a runway show. And then by the time you get to fast fashion, they're just these little like poof, like a little small poof sleeve, but it's still like referencing that trend. So that's kind of what it is. It's just, you start off with the most extravagant version of that design and it gets pared down. But of course, that's why some people might buy designer as opposed to fast fashion. It's because you're gonna get the most interesting and the most dramatic or the most intricate version of that trend. So you'll be like ultra trendy. But also, just if you're someone who cares about design in general, it's really cool to get something that has more interesting design to it. For example, I'm a big fan of Marine Serre. Everyone's seen these Marine Serre like moon print tops, right? Like K-pop stars wear them, then of course they got knocked off. You can find them for $5 in AliExpress. Like, they are everywhere. Knockoffs are everywhere. You could purchase a real one or you could purchase a knockoff. They literally look the same. However, that pattern has been used in more interesting ways. Like, I bought this Marine Serre, I call it the speed dress for obvious reasons. I got this because I'm like, well, I like that print, but the top is so boring and like so basic, which I get is why that's popular, is because it's very marketable. It's very easy for people to use. But the dress is more interesting to me. Like, I can still layer that with stuff. I can still use it in creative ways because it's still neutral colors, but it's visually more interesting and it stands on its own well as like a focal piece, right? So that's one reason to purchase designer directly, is because you can get more interesting versions of the popular thing. Plus, you could just get more interesting stuff in general, and all things that people don't even know about if you're purchasing from the designer. For example, I have these Prada heels from their Fall/Winter 2018 collection. I got them for pretty cheap secondhand because no one cares about them, because they weren't the big it thing of that collection. The shoe that became really popular from that collection was the flame heels, so those get really expensive secondhand and everyone wanted them and they were everywhere. But I was able to get these, which I like better and I find more wearable, for like a decent price because no one cares about them. So that's another reason to shop designer too, is there's a lot more options than just the popular thing that you see that gets knocked off and ripped off, copied everywhere. Well, that's the thing with designer, is they are designers. Like, they actually put a lot of thought and a lot of effort and a lot of work into what they're making, as opposed to just finding something else and doing a cheaper or easier or more simplified version of it. Like, as someone who is a design nerd, I pay a lot of attention to the details and I really look for the thought that went into making something. Like, I'm very detail oriented. I'll notice the tiny things. I'll notice all those little engravings on the hardware. I'll notice how on designer bags the monogram's always gonna line up perfectly, stuff like that. See, because designers think about aspects of the design that smaller companies wouldn't care about or wouldn't notice. Or maybe wouldn't even be able to think about due to things like budget or staffing concerns. And it's those little things that make the quality feel better. Which is a good segue into talking about the quality. People always question, like, is it actually better quality or are they just charging more for it? The answer is yes. to both of those. Designer brands, of course, are going to use better quality materials. Like they'll use real leather, or at least really good quality vegan leather if they're like a vegan brand. They'll use better quality hardware that won't tarnish as quickly. Things are made to patina and not just like wear off or break. Like designer stuff never breaks. That's why most designer stores, actually all the ones I've heard of, have a thing where like if something breaks, you can bring it into the store and they'll just repair it for you, because it's so rare that it even happens. The hardware is just, the build quality is just better. Like they're made to last, and that's why people are willing to pay more for it in the first place. Of course, nowadays brands will get clout and then charge more for things just because of the name, especially brands like Louis Vuitton. As much as I love that brand's designs, like, oh my god, their profit margins are insane. But you know, that's what happens. They charge more from the beginning because of the better quality, and that's what you'll notice with a lot of like sustainable brands too, is they're more expensive for the same thing, but that's because it's sustainable and sustainability costs more. So that's just how it is right now. The better quality materials are going to be more expensive. But then once a brand gets hype attached to it, then it'll shoot up the price even more. So that's why designer brands are so expensive. It's both because they are better quality, but also because people like them and people want to buy them. It's a demand thing. I want to show you guys 2 examples of like quality when it comes to designer. I have this hoodie from Off-White. You can see on the back, it's the Sakura Arrows hoodie. It was pretty popular when it first came out, like, what was that, 5 years ago now? I don't know, it was while I was in college. I've seen a lot of knockoffs of this hoodie because, like I said, it was really popular when it came out. But there's a lot of differences I've noticed between the real one and the knockoffs that I think do set it apart and make it worth paying more for. First of all, the overall quality of the sweatshirt, like the comfort and like it's actually super warm. It's comparable, I'd say, to my sweatshirt from Carhartt, which was a fraction of the price, but of course that's just a simple gray sweatshirt, you know, nothing else going on. But quality-wise, I'd say it's comparable to that. And we all know Carhartt's good quality. It's based in workwear. It's meant to last, you know. But aside from that, there's all these extra design elements. For example, the Sakura Arrows design on the back, this is actually embroidered on this real one. And like, it's really good quality embroidery from what I've seen of embroidery. I'm not a seamstress. But it looks really nice, it feels great. And the thing with this is that as long as I continue to treat it well, it's gonna last forever, right? It's not gonna fall apart. Whereas all the knockoffs, the design is screen printed on. And the thing with screen printing is that if you've had a graphic t-shirt, you would know this, of course. The more you wash it, the more crackled it gets. It'll start to discolor. Depending on the quality of the print and like how they printed it on, it might even start to peel off, things like that. So screen printing is not going to hold up nearly as well as embroidery. Now, a few other elements of this that, of course, I notice. The hardware. I'll show close-up pictures on the screen so you can actually see. But it's got one of those circle zipper pulls that was really trendy. But it has the brand name just engraved on it. Of course it does. It's a luxury brand. They're all going to do that. They're all going to have that engraving on there. Whereas a knockoff from AliExpress or whatever, it's not going to be personalized at all. It's not going to be round, probably. Not the ones I've seen. The ones I've seen literally just have a regular zipper. So that's, again, one of those just subtle design things that I think makes a difference. Another thing, on the little hoodie pull things, there is a metal egglet on the end. The fact that it's metal both means it's going to last longer. Like if you've seen the egglets on your shoelaces, the plastic ones where they'll just like crack and start peeling off after a while, not going to happen with this one. Plus it has the added effect of, since it's weighted, it's going to pull the string down and help it lay flat. Whereas on regular sweatshirts, you get the like kind of curly thing that happens, or it'll just kind of be floating all over. This is going to keep it looking really nice. Plus on the front pockets on this one, it has flocked text on there, which of course the knockoffs probably can't copy because that'll probably bring them closer to copyright infringement or something, who knows. Because that's the thing with designer and luxury brands, is they think more about how it feels to actually wear the item, whereas knockoffs or fast fashion or whatever, they're gonna think about what it looks like. They're not gonna think about the texture or the feel or how it's gonna be to actually wear that item, which I think makes a huge difference in user experience, which again, I'm a design nerd, so I think about that. But however, we get into slightly different territory when we talk about replicas. My Louis Vuitton Spring Street bag is a replica, actually. The only reason I know that is because there's no serial number. So that's another thing, especially with handbags and like luggage, is designer brands will always have a serial number in there so that you know it's legit. But the thing is, I have stuff that I actually bought from LV this doesn't feel any different. And since it's a replica, it's meant to imitate the original as closely as possible. So in terms of build quality, this feels amazing. Literally the hardware has the engraving on it. And like I mentioned earlier, the monograms on designer bags are all gonna line up perfectly. So on this one, here it does, on the handle it does, it all lines up. The only reason I know that this is a replica, aside from the lack of a serial number, is that on this strap, the monogram is not lined up. Again, I'll put pictures on the screen so you can actually see. But the thing is, if I take that handle off, you literally can't tell. You think this is real LV. And that's why people purchase replicas, is because this was like $200. The real bag is like $2,000. And that's why people often ask, like, why buy the real thing? And when you're talking about replicas, it really is just, do you care about the ethics of it, right? And that's kind of a discussion for another day, is like whether it's ethical to purchase replicas versus supporting the actual designer. I'm not gonna get into that right now. But like in terms of quality, my replica bag is essentially the same as a real one. So why pay more for the real one, right? That's the big question. But that's the other thing too, is like I mentioned with design, not everything gets a replica. You might have a favorite bag from Gucci or whatever that no one ever knocks off, no one ever replicas, so your only option is to get the real one. But like I said, designer pieces are made to last. Replicas, I don't know, because they're honestly usually from very sketchy sources. We don't know exactly how they're made. We don't know if the hardware is of the same quality. We don't know if the leather is going to start peeling at some point, or if it's actually going to patina nicely like it's intended to. It's really hard to tell when you're getting bootlegs and replicas and stuff like that, which is why people who are in any way wary of that and want their stuff to last will probably tend to purchase the designer item. So now that we know that clout is a big reason to purchase designer pieces, which like you may or may not care about that, I think people with actual money probably don't care. People who want to seem like they have money will care, and people who are into fashion will probably care. But I think the average person probably doesn't care that much about clout. But now that we know that also the actual design work and the actual physical quality of the items is better, what about the cons of buying designer fashion? Because there are a few. One major con of luxury and designer brands is that they do not care about sustainability. Like, they are barely making an effort to be more sustainable, and that's so frustrating because we know how much money they're making. We know they're making way too much money, right? And yet they're still not making the effort. Like, if they're already charging so much, like their profit margins are already big. Because like I said earlier, they charge more for the quality, then they charge more for brand name recognition. Maybe more than that too, like for no reason. Like, they charge so much, there has to be room in there to use more sustainable materials, right? But they're just not. And if you're someone who really cares about sustainability or is trying to make an effort to be more sustainable, that's really frustrating. One way you can get around that is by purchasing things secondhand. Of course, you may not then end up with the trendiest, most current pieces. So if you're someone who cares a lot about being trendy and current and having that clout of being like having the new it thing for that season, that's not really your favorite option, especially because the newer season stuff that does end up secondhand is going to be more expensive. Sometimes they upcharge what the original price was even, which is still so stupid to me. If you want to see my mini rant about like resale market, that's over my TikTok. But like, at least buying stuff secondhand, you're not supporting the brand that isn't being sustainable directly, and you're giving something a new life. You're extending the life of that item instead of it going to a landfill or whatever else. Purchasing secondhand is good. I always recommend that. Things are going to be way more affordable there anyway, as opposed to purchasing from the designer brand. So that leads me to the second con of purchasing from designer brands, which again is the price. Most people cannot afford that, and if you can, it's something you really have to save up for, which is why most of us who are not rich people have to think a lot about what we're going to buy before we buy it. And like, for how much money they're getting, they're really doing nothing with it, right? They're not trying to be more sustainable. They're not trying to be more ethical. So it's really, what are you supporting? Some people will argue that when you buy from the designer brand, that money is going to the ateliers and the people who make the items and put in all the work. But is it really, like, honestly, it's probably just going to the executives, like with any other capitalist kind of brand. Are we actually supporting artists like we think we are when we're buying designer brands? And that's where some of those ethics come in of purchasing a replica versus purchasing designer. So to answer the question, is it worth it to purchase designer? I don't know. I'm sure that's not the answer you wanted to hear, but I think it's really up to the individual based on the information that I've given you to decide whether or not you think it's worth it. Do you care about the clout? Do you care about that quality? Do you care about really good design work? Because if you do, it can be worth it to purchase designer or to find designers secondhand. But then again, sometimes supporting a designer brand isn't the best thing because you're just kind of enabling them to charge too much and not be sustainable, right? So really, I think that's up to the individual person. For me, I've determined that I like purchasing designers secondhand because then it's more affordable. And then that way I'm forced to like really consider like, is this a piece that I really want because I want it and like I like it and I will use it, or am I just trying to get it because it's the hot new trendy thing? I've bought a few designer pieces at full or near full price from like directly from the brand, and really it's just a lot of money, you know? Like I still love the pieces that I bought. In fact, my Marine Sarah pants are like my favorite pants. I love these things, but is it worth the price? Kinda. Again, that's up to you and how you assign values to things to decide if it is worth it to you or not. If anything, I definitely would recommend if there is a piece that you like a specific piece, scouring secondhand markets for it. There are a lot of them. And just deciding how much you really want it. That's gonna do it for this video. I didn't really script it, I just kind of talked. So if it didn't make sense, I'm sorry. If you want me to expand more on any of the topics I talked about in this video, feel free to drop a comment and I can always do that. Feel free to check out my TikTok and my Instagram for more fashion content, especially styling related content, which is my favorite. And stay tuned for the next time I rant about something. Bye!